Welcome, travelers. I'm Josh.
And I'm Lee Wanika, and this is Tabletop Journeys, where we will be your not-so-humble guides on the quest for RPG adventures.
All right, welcome everybody to tonight's episode of Tabletop Journeys. Very excited to have another content creator on tonight. But before we introduce tonight's guest, Mr. Miller, I see you repping the Drinking and Dragons t-shirt once again. How are things down in the wonderful, fantabulous state of Connecticut this evening?
Things are going well. Years ago we said we don't want to talk about weather at the outside of every
At the outset of every show,
episode.
Yeah,
Our pre-show, that's exactly what we were talking about. So I'll just say, yeah, weather's been weird. Oddly cold at weird times, oddly humid and warm at other times. I can't get it figured out. There's no state of dress that is appropriate for the entire day. But what is appropriate for the entire day is repping great game sessions and setups, getting ready for to help the folks at Drinking and Dragons coming up in June. It's going to be an exciting time. They are getting ready for another good session in Colchester, Connecticut. And what's really cool is in honor of Pride Month, the June game will also be supporting, or the charity portion of the event, because these events are all for charity.
Yeah, you're all charity
This
events,
month's charity is going to be Out CT, which is a great organization down here in southeastern Connecticut dedicated to supporting the LGBTQ community. Does a lot of different outreach programs. They've actually been expanded over the years. But one of the things that I'm very passionate about is the fact that they offer safe spaces for teens, so that they can feel safe, have community, and build healthy habits and healthy relationships, whereas that can be very difficult. So
yeah, absolutely.
I'm excited that we've actually partnered with them this year, and there's more on that coming in the future, the very near future, or you might have heard some of it earlier this week, but really excited to be a part of that. And it's going to be grand.
Yeah, it's always awesome to go ahead and support Drinking and Dragons, an organization that does a lot of really, really great work down there. So really excited for that. And just to go ahead and bring it back to the beginning there. Yeah, it's weird up here in Maine. For the first time in like months, there has been this weird yellowy light in the sky that was like shining and producing shadows.
Don't go to the light.
I'm not sure what it was. It was very weird. I had not seen it. Seriously, it's like I was saying beforehand that the weather people were saying that in April there were 4 sunny days up here, and before today in May there had been 3. So it's been ridiculously rainy, cold, overcast weather here in Maine. So nice to see that finally. I think spring is finally upon us, which is fantastic. It's making it feel very, very warm, very, very temperate, nearly desert-like up here. Honestly, it's so it's almost like they knew that we were talking about the topic we've got open for tonight, and wanted to go ahead and make sure that I was sweating as if as if in one of the Mummy movies. So that's be good. It's fantastic. Yeah. So.
Look, one of us has got to be Rick, and the other one's got to be Benny, and it's going to be whoever rolls lowest, I think.
Exactly.
That's really the way it's going to go. I mean, Benny stole every scene.
Yeah,
but
totally. Yeah,
he didn't end so well. I'm not big on the creepy crawlies.
What are you gonna do? So without any further ado, though, let's go ahead and introduce tonight's guest. So we are very happy to go ahead and have Coleman Conley on with us tonight to go ahead and talk about his game Khoursara. Coleman, welcome first of all to Tabletop Journeys. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Thank you guys for having me on. It's great to be in the desert, as you guys are saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
Colorado weather has not been much better. So.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is. I mean, that's we deal with the hand that we're dealt, right? So, before we kind of start peppering you mercilessly with questions here, why don't you give us the 3,000-foot view? What is Khoursara, and what are we talking about tonight?
Yeah, Khoursara, the city of Seven Sentinels, is our campaign setting. My partner and I have been working on. It began as just sort of, our homebrew campaign world. But over time, our interest in game design overflowed the bucket that is us meeting every week, and we're like, okay, maybe we should like put it into a book.
Yeah, start writing the stuff down. Yeah,
exactly. So it's
no shade
it's
cast here.
exactly. So we have a lot of excitement for art history. As I'm a designer myself, and my partner is an illustrator. And as we took more and more art history classes, just for normal college, we're like, oh, there's so much interesting stuff. So I just kept taking more and more courses, and eventually I was like, I just want to do all of this.
Yeah.
And so, flash forward years and years later, we're like plugging all of that into our D&D nonsense, and all of our friends are like, this is probably like real life history stuff, right? And we're like, yeah, it is. Yeah. But no, the setting itself, it's a blend of it's science fantasy. I've been calling it dieselpunk.
Dieselpunk,
but,
which I loved.
some people are like, well, it's not really that dieselpunk, but there's many layers to it, because it's using the layers of real life, ancient Egypt, all of the mythology, and the many dynasties of the different kingdom periods, all stacked on top of each other. And so there is a lot of literal layers, including technology and cultural evolving life throughout this giant city. And so so the book it's mostly a setting, but half the book will be mechanics. It'll have new ancestries you can play as. It's got a new class. It's got a bunch of new magic items. It's got an adventure. Just a little bit of everything, just to get you sort of started in the city of Khoursara.
Yeah. Perfect. That sounds fantastic. There is so much in here that I want to go ahead and dive into. So I think, Mr. Miller, I believe that is our call. Fan roll dice to the ready. Let's see who gets to go first. We traditionally roll initiative to see who gets to go first. So
I guess, and tonight playing the role of Benny.
Well, I mean, I rolled a 1 on my initiative, so I'm not sure what you got, but that's.
I get to be Rick. That is awesome, because I rolled a 2.
Oh man, we've played too much Star Trek. See, I'm using my Star Trek dice. That's my problem here.
You get to be Brendan Fraser now.
Exactly.
Yes. Evie. Oh man. So I as I said pre-show, I had been looking through the project. I've been looking through the preview you were kind enough to provide us, so we can kind of get a good look at this, and just love it. The artwork is brilliant, evocative. And the mechanics were really cool. I'm a big fan of the term ancestry versus other options. So that was a touch point that I'm very happy to see and notice. But, my question really goes to why the connection to Egypt? Like, what was it about Egyptology, Egyptian history, the Egyptian pantheons and mythologies that spoke to you, that said, here's where I want to focus? I love other aspects, and Josh will probably get to some of those as well. But I almost feel like, some of those things could have been done with lots of different mythologies, but this is the one you chose. So I'm really interested in finding out why this one. What was the spark that was within this concept that really spoke to you and your team?
Yeah, totally. For me, it was for any cultural landscape. I feel like it's really interesting to pick a lens and then really focus through that lens to be like, okay, well, like you'll see. I think even D&D officially did a Greece setting, I think, and for them, they were like, okay, well, if we're going to focus on Greece as a mythology, then we may as well focus on the gods, right? And things like that. And for me, with Egypt, it was always the idea of cycles, of things being cyclical. And the more I thought about it, I was like thinking about a way for me to project a bunch of my favorite things, which is, like Halo, Ghost in the Shell, a lot of these things, I grew up sort of watching and playing and stuff. And I was like, man, these games have such in these movies and these TV shows, they have such interesting monumentality and space. They're really good at making you really think big and conceptually. So I was like, okay, well, if we're talking about like the afterlife of ancient Egypt, which is something that cyclically in cycles has always persisted through, right? And each dynasty, first and thereafter, um, managed to retain a lot of similar traits to the ones that came before them. And that made me think a lot about how technology works and how data works and how data can be overwritten, data can be lost, but at the end of the day, you have this replicating information that's sequential and it's repeating over and over again. So I was thinking, you could totally represent these cycles that we see throughout Egyptian dynasties, and this retaining information over and over again, that gets reused and recontextualized depending on who's the pharaoh, who's in charge, right? Is it not even the pharaoh? Sometimes it's going to be the cult of Amun Ra, and they're gonna say, well, Mr. Tut, we're going to be in charge now. We're going to use, we're going to use Ra as our major symbol, and that's going to change, what these symbols and these gods used to mean into a new context, which benefits whoever needs that, right? So it's a lot of different disparate ideas that sort of came together with, okay, well, if you've got cool afterlife, the duat, why not think of that in terms of like a digital technological space as well? What happens when that culture that's repeated normally throughout all this history eventually hits a wall of crazy technology, and then suddenly these things start to fuse together, and now you have sacred machines and mummified mechanical things and things like that. So
Yeah. The one of the things that struck me when I was reading through kind of the way and hearing you now talk about the cyclicalness of it all in the old Earth Dawn setting, the dragons in Earth Dawn had this very interesting view on the way time worked, that they viewed all time as cyclical, and that they could, so what that allowed them to go ahead and do was to look at the moment of time that they were in and realize that there are things that were going to come after it, but that they knew the things that were going to come after it, and they also knew the things that came before it. But it allowed them to kind of move along the time in a circular fashion, so that they could move through time, but that they also knew what was coming and what had happened, kind of thing. But in the order and the sequence was all weird. Anyway, all that to go ahead and say, like, it seems like it's that very similar concept where you have like these vertical layers of time, and you're at any time you're looking at like a slice of it, and you could be looking at the same event that's happened in 7 different epochs, and what the connections are kind of vertically through those layers of time, like it's a cake, which I thought was a brilliant way to kind of set up a world. It's just a really interesting way to lay it out.
totally,
And
yeah.
for me, one
Like,
of the things that I touched on was just the fundamentally immense amount of options you provide your game masters, players, and groups. So if somebody wants to get that original old classical Egyptian feel, they can do that. If somebody wants something a little further along, they can do that. And if they want to do something kind of like Eberron, if Egyptian culture was in the prime, they can do that.
exactly.
If they want to go to World War One kind of modern era, but
Lawrence of
again
Arabia,
with
sort of, yeah.
with Egyptian culture being the primary driver versus Western European cultures and Western cultures in general, they could do that. Further, you could even go and you could keep going. You could go, what would happen if this was, cyberpunk? What would happen if this was,
Totally.
and it's all kind of baked in as you can do any of these. A game master could say, let's start here, but let's say you're visited by somebody from there. There's just so many different ways that this can be, to borrow Josh's phrase, this cake can be sliced, that every table can run it slightly different. And I think that plays into what you said in your in your opening bit where it was about creating, this, a setting book.
There's a
I like
universality to
that
it. Yeah.
phrase. There's different, like people will say, oh, this is a campaign book. That seems more system specific. This is a supplement book. Again, kind of system specific, but a setting book is, that's very tasty. There's something very nice about that. There's something very calming, soothing, and strengthening within that terminology, and I think that all kind of fits in here.
Cool.
Yeah, totally.
All right. So I wanted to dive in specifically to the relationship between the spiritual and the technological that you have written in this book. I mean, even when in the sampler that you gave us, one of the things that kind of like really called that out was the canopic monitors, these technological creations which are responsible for the kind of the guiding process to the afterlife that is so kind of key in Egyptian mythology, right? Like that's such
Totally.
that process is such a big character in the mythology, and then you've got these technological aspect that is responsible for that. So I want you to talk a little bit about how, especially with like kind of the old world Egypt references in here, how does technology play into them, and kind of what's the relationship between the super spiritual aspect of it and the technological?
Yeah, and so I liked the idea of, and this has become sort of part of the central theme. At first, it was sort of a thing that could happen in your game, but as I ran more and more of it and wrote more and more of it, I was like, this would be really interesting if it could, eventually become like a core, not a problem, but a thing that is changing in your setting. Is what if your afterlife is slowly digitizing? It's slowly uploading and changing, and that's because these ancient towers surrounding the city are being unsealed by the powers that be, who are like, we want to win a civil war, so we will pop open these ancient giant structures and see what's within. And so the way I internalized a lot of that was to focus on the idea that there are aspects of the ka, of the soul, right? And so in Egyptian mythology, and it depends on obviously what time period you're looking at, but there's this idea that the soul, the person that you are, is made up of different parts, and in journeying to the afterlife, you can lose certain parts of yourself, whether it's your shut, which is your shadow, or your name even. Or the spiritual self versus the physical self, right? And so this is sort of how they thought of a person, was like, you're a collection of all of these things. And so as the afterlife of Khoursara is slowly again digitizing, you see elements like this where people who are normally in transit to the afterlife, because that's what they believe in this region, as they're in transit, they may lose fundamental parts of their self. And so, and as you guys brought up earlier, you can play this in any time period that you prefer, right? So if you like the classical sort of Egypt, those mechanics will just be the normal concept of, okay, you're going to get your heart weighed, you're going to cross this river, you're going to go to the field of gold grains, you're going to go see Mr. Osire, who is our Osiris, right? But if you wanted that more technological sort of vibe, you can progress that and be like, okay, well, it's this thing you've experienced before, but now it's all strange and liminal, and things are like breaking down, and files are corrupting, right? Instead of just your name, for example, it's like it's your username, right?
Yeah.
It's your cartouche. It was manifesting differently.
Yeah.
And you maybe it gets duplicated and someone else starts running around posing as you or something like that. All sorts of different things that I wanted to. In the book itself, it's going to be a lot of interesting tables and things, but the main selling point we were sort of driving at was it's like New Game Plus, if you play a video game.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Like that is that's really just that's just kind of the best. And that whole concept of that, as one progresses from one state of being to the next state of being, that parts of themselves may not make it, right? That they may make it, but they may not be whole when they get there. Like there's so many kind of cultures and there's so many different ways that you can kind of do that same sort of thing, that I really love that you leaned into it, because that's all that I want to say about that, because I don't, if anybody from my home game is listening, I don't want them to get too much. But
Spoilers.
that's
There's some
exactly.
spoilers.
Yeah.
I have that all the time.
Yeah. It's I have a big mouth, so that's I have it all the time.
We're
but
gonna channel
I love
River Song. Spoilers.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. I love it. I love it. I love all of that. That's just fantastic. So
Yeah, and I was to add to that, the other half of that equation to me was factoring in, as I was sort of talking about before, but this idea that things are becoming obsolete, right? And so as the culture progresses, they take certain characters and vilify them, and then transform them to something new, so that they could justify the current rule, right? So as I mentioned before, like Osiris is sort of a much newer kingdom sort of guy, right? And so they needed a way to justify this new rulership. And so they go, okay, well, they used to believe in this guy called Set, but now he's chaos, right?
Right.
So we had this established thing, and then in order to bring in the new thing, they were like, actually, this is the evil thing. The new thing trounces over that evil thing, or is betrayed by that evil thing. In the case of Osiris, who is killed by Set. And so I was like, okay, well, all of that stuff's still happening. And then on top of that, much like you would overwrite, a folder or data or a file of some kind, the gods themselves are facing a new paradigm shift where they're like, oh, I used to be the system of life and death, so now I have to change. I have to, I have to justify my existence now, so these humans will still believe in me. So some of them are, being overwritten as the system of death itself, or, the flow of the flooding of the Nile and stuff like that.
Nice. That's so cool. All right, Leonika, it is your turn. Time for your question, sir.
Yeah, so I'm gonna step away from the metaphysical and get into the physical with my question. One of the things that I liked a lot, and if for no other reason than this is kind of the world Josh and I have been living in for quite some time, and the world that I dig into a lot in the games I run, which is detailing the megapolis that you have set up and the various noble families, or in the TTJ parlance, factions that you have, and how well defined they are, and how they can interplay. I love the feel that you've put here, where there was enough information to say, here's who they are, now go make with them. It's not like I feel in some cases many factions are in other games, not to pick on too many, but the light guys and the folks that have the fancy instrument from the world's most popular tabletop game. They're fine in general, but they're so crazily well defined. Specifically, the Harpers. Really, I mean, they're just so super defined that it is very difficult, I feel, as a game master, to really truly make them your own.
Yeah.
If you're running a box adventure and it's in this world, or even if you're running your homebrew adventures, but you are dealing exclusively within the canon that has been set up, those are fine. But I don't feel that you can port those to other things well, because they're so innately tied. Yeah. And so seeing factions like this really jazzes me up. But I was hoping you might be able to share with our audience a bird's eye view of some of the factions, so they have an idea. when folks go to the Kickstarter and they're like, okay, should I get this? I think factions maybe for folks who are not as into the metaphysics yet, and though that's great flavor and it makes for epic adventures, that may not be the hook that brings them to the table. So I was thinking, this is a great anchor for, especially for newer players, to come to a game, right? You can say, if you like playing this type of thing, there's a faction for you, and here's what it would be. There's a noble house you could come from, and here's what it is. So I was hoping you might be able to shed some light, share a few of them. So some of your favorites are some of the ones that you feel are really showstoppers for the audience.
Yeah, totally. No, I 100% agree with you there. Where for some people, it's about the physical realm, and especially because in this game we play, whether it's the big main one that everyone plays, or any other spin-off system, it's always going to be about your character as a player, right? It's hard to get players excited about, especially with something like this, right? Where it's like we're talking about, oh, when your character dies, then all this stuff happens. It's like, okay, well, but what about everything leading up to that, right? And so, with the noble houses, a lot of that was, based on the real life sort of structure of nomarchs and viziers and stuff, right? When you have a pharaoh, and then he has a bunch of guys, and then those guys are like managing districts around his empire, right? I was like, okay, well, in real life Egyptian culture, we had a lot of ones that were defined by their local resources, right? Their municipalities are defined by, okay, well, we have a really good setup on, let's say, perfume, right? And so you'll have an entire district that is focused on just producing perfume, and then that becomes part of the culture, right? They have a local god who is, the god of their perfumes, or fishing, or whichever sort of thing. And so you have these noble houses heading each of these places, to ground all of that and control all of it. And so I wanted to zoom out even further than that and say, well, okay, well, this is a megalopolis. We can't have we can't have 30 factions, right? And so we have now a faction for sort of most aspects of life, right? The Pharaoh's faction is the neutral one, which are the Medjay. They're kind of the royal guards. They kind of act as police, but they're also sort of the bureaucratic systems that enable everything to work. And I say work in quotations because, as with many real life systems, they fail. And that's actually a big part of this system, of this setting, is the powers that be do fail their citizens, and then everything falls apart, right? And it begins a new cycle. So there's the Medjay. We have House Veum, who are the royal army of the pharaoh, and so it's been sort of a peacetime, at least as of the start of this book, but you can obviously choose different segments of history. But it's been peacetime for longer than the military would like. So they're sort of going a bit stir crazy. They would like something to do, and of course, when the pharaoh is removed from the equation, then they are super excited to get their enchanted chariots out, their boats, and everything, and travel around and sort of start some civil conflict. But if I had to pick a favorite, I would probably choose House Midra, which is the medical house. They're sort of, as time has progressed, the sort of technologies have improved a standard of living, and now people are living longer and longer. And as such, the medical houses, which used to just be made up of priests, are now actual doctors who know how to treat people. And where there are doctors, there are important people who need doctors, right? And so House Midra is universally seen as like a pretty good, nice, noble house, but they are also the biggest spy organization in the world, because everyone needs doctors. Everyone needs doctors. So it's sort of this kind of funny but interesting idea, I thought, where you could have these doctors listening in at key parts of, all sorts of goings on. And that means they not just have to be trained in surgery or things like that, but also spying
Spycraft,
and
yeah.
spycraft, right? Listening in and placing wards down. And so they use these sensors that can take incense inside of them, and when they burn them, different effects will happen, whether they're medical or sabotage. So they have these, hanging from chains, and so maybe they need to make a getaway because something bad has happened, and they spark it up, and suddenly this mirage will float up, and all that's left is smoke, and they're gone, and things like that. So yeah, there's 7 noble houses, and each one is doing different facets of life in Khoursara. And so I wanted to give each one a distinct personality so that the players will not just engage with them, but either maybe they want to join them, or maybe they'll be like, let's team up with these guys because they're the least mean to us, or
Right.
or they're offering us this, and this. On the other side of the equation is the guild corporations. Because as society advances, so does technology, and the people who own the technology are not the nobility. It's the people who spend the most money to control trade, to control manufacturing. And so now you have like literal corporations are cropping up and changing the way everything works. Now there are rail systems going through the city, and the noble houses are like, what the hell is this? What do we do with this? We can't police this and stuff. So they sort of have bought into power.
I really love all of that, and specifically, I'll just talk about the medical folks being spies. That is an element of absolute brilliance, and I say that because I am hard pressed to think of any IP that has ever done that. I cannot think of one. I may be wrong. And audience out there, comment down below if you can think of an IP that has done this as well. But I cannot think of one. And I, for the life of me, can't figure out why it hasn't been. Like, it is absolutely brilliant. To me, that concept alone and seeing that in play is worth the price on the cover.
You've had things like
it is that good.
Like Star Wars and other things where like medical professionals are taken over by spy organizations, and kind of being used as puppets, things like that. Like stories of like the old KGB and everything like that, where like so and so would go in for a sniffle and get seen by a different doctor who's actually a spy, that kind of thing. So it's not really the same thing, but it's kind of in that same area. And I'm surprised to hear you say how much you enjoyed that, because I can imagine how much that triggers your internal paranoia, because I know how much you love doctors, Lewanika. Like that's
it absolutely triggers my paranoia, which is why I know
why you love it. Yeah. It's kind of like me and spiders. Yeah.
It takes me back to something my mother used to watch. She used to love General Hospital, and one of the spies back in the 80s was Grant Putnam. And at some point, he was taken over by a Russian spy, and there's a Russian spy, Andrei Chernin, who actually did the role for a number of years. And it was one of those soap opera things, like you met the character Grant Putnam, and then like 6 years later found out, he was always a spy all the time. And apparently he killed the real Grant Putnam. And then 6 months later, after they arrest and get rid of the real the Andrei Chernin, all of a sudden the real Grant Putnam turns up because he was actually in a Russian gulag, and now he's here and angry at the woman he loved, who was married to. It's just
yeah.
But the fact was like that was really the only time I recalled seeing a doctor being used as a spy, and I thought that was and that was like a one person thing. It wasn't like the whole organization. It was a spy organization sent a guy to be a doctor. That I've seen. I have not seen the cadre of doctors. That's their other mission. That's what I found was interesting, and again, brilliant. I mean, I've seen things where plumbers have done it, right? Because plumbers are everywhere. But doctors,
exactly.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah. I agree. I really loved the way you kind of stacked up the noble houses and the corporations together in a way that said, like, the corporations are kind of usurping power from the noble houses, and how are the noble houses now responding to the fact that these corporations, these other, for lack of a better phrase, right, are kind of like taking some of their their God-given power, how are they kind of responding to that, and how the various noble houses respond to that in different ways. There's kind of a lead follower, get out of the way kind of mentality, right? Where it's like sometimes they like, oh, we can use these people. These are helpful. These corporations are helpful. They can go ahead and help us further our goals. Versus other people that are like, no, they need to be gone. We need to get rid of them because they're in our way, kind of thing. So yeah, it's a really, really interesting dichotomy.
Totally.
And every time they help you, you're actually feeding the beast that will later come back to bite you. So
exactly.
It's like, how much do you want them to help you versus whatever, there's layers is the perfect way to describe it.
I also love how you called the publishing corporation the Promised World. I think that is, again, such an evocative title for what the publishing world would be. It's like it is promising things that could be given the right kind of impetus and the right kind and the right financial backing and all that sort of stuff. But it is just really evocative. I thought the titles in general were super evocative, which was really nice. So
thank you. Yeah, no, they're a fun one as well, because I was really trying to think of different advancements with to compare real life Egypt with like a hypothetical weird dieselpunk and eventually even crazier sci-fi stuff. And I was like, well, one of our biggest things we saw become a technology was spreading the word of published media, right? That was huge. That changed how everything worked. And now, you can't just have a noble power do whatever they want and the people just be like, well, that must be what's happening. Right now you have this organization that is letting everyone know, oh, by the way, this crazy thing is happening. Or maybe they get bought out and then you have some crazy other media shenanigans going on. So I thought okay, this could be, especially when you have like demiotic as a script that took root in Egypt as like, okay, we're using hieroglyphics for our sacred stuff, but we need a system of writing that's really efficient and, kind of calligraphic. Whatever the word.
I think that's the right word. Yeah.
That one.
We are a show where Lee can accept words all the time, so that you're in your company. Yeah.
Exactly. And so
I'm happy with
that affects the calligraphic.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that all feeds into that idea. So
nice. Awesome. Okay, so it's my question next. I wanted to get into the adventure that you have kind of coming along with this a little bit. And first off, I want to go ahead and say that, we have been preaching the word of like getting starter adventures in game supplements and stuff like this for a really, really long time, because it's the best way, we think, to kind of teach the intricacies of the game world and the game setting and everything like that. It's the best way to kind of lay it out, is to go ahead and run through an adventure where people learn things about the game through the adventure. So I wanted you to kind of give a primer on what the adventure that's going to be included in the book is, and what people would expect to go ahead and see, and kind of what elements they would expect to go ahead and pick up in that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, I really agree where I think it's really fun to have and useful as a DM to have a lot of the book is a toolbox to me. It's a big container of interesting things that the DM can pick and choose what they think is fun and what they think is cool. But I think an adventure, of course, that's the best way to use all of these tools. And now you can have, interplay between your players. And now there's a literal adventure that is formatting. Oh, by the way, this noble house, well, they're looming over their heads, in this area and stuff like that. So yeah, no, the included adventure is called Apopic Machination. And that's and part of the adventure is to further tie the technology with the cultural themes. And so I liked this idea that you are not even beginning the adventure in Khoursara, but you're sent there by one of their allies from the neighboring sort of region of Zebraloth, which are these like savannah dwarves, and they're like, hey, these guys used to be our friends for everything. We used to trade down the river like every single, every week, every day, and they've been like dead silent. We have no idea what's going on. something bad is happening, and so you sort of have a hook where your players are supposed to deliver some diplomats, but also some dwarven spies into Khoursara, and so it's meant to take you through. I think right now I have it as sort of levels 1 through maybe like I think maybe 10. Well, we're going to see how much we can get away with funding wise. And so we start them as just like, okay, that's weird. What's this giant megacity is somehow going radio silent? How is that happening, right? And they slowly piece together that there's this cult, not a normal word cult in the Egyptian sense, where you have like a cult to a normal god that everyone believes in, but an underground cult, one that is not certified by the Divine Commission or whoever. And so they slowly sort of uncover that there's this ancient machine that is buried well beneath the layers of the current city. That's from this like ancient, probably old, even pre-dynastic period. And this machine, it feeds on blood, and so the players are
as all
slowly
properly evil
realizing,
machines do. Yeah.
yeah. You gotta pour some. It's like ultra kill, you know. And so they slowly start to piece together that this machine, which has some stuff to do with Apophis or Apep in the original pronunciation, the giant crazy chaos serpent of myth. I can't go too much into it because my players might hear this.
And we hope they do.
We hope they do. We hope they tune in. They slowly uncover that this machine that is fused with this chaos god is starting to impact the lives of everyday citizens, even so far as it's assassinating and removing various noble hierarchs, people in charge of things, so they can grasp control of their power. So
that's so cool.
Yeah,
I love it.
I dig it.
Yeah, cool. All right, Mr. Miller. Yeah, probably your third and final question of the evening. Yeah,
last question. All right, so
cool.
I'm going to take us out of the game and the material in specific, but I do want to talk about the Kickstarter itself. I know that you have, at the time of recording, it has just begun. At the time of air, there will be about a week left, so we're encouraging everyone to jump in, go out there. There's no time to follow. Just get out there, check it out. If it's for you, and I'm confident it will be, go ahead and back this. But I would say my question to you is share with our audience the types of things that they might find on that Kickstarter, as far that you have, and and options that they may come across, so they can have an idea of, ooh, that sounds good. Like I'd like to get that as well.
Yeah, totally. For the Kickstarter itself, we have just the PDF if you prefer. And that's our sort of cheaper option, but you can also do different add-ons. You can get it as a physical book if you want. The book itself is planned to be probably 200 or more, probably 200 plus pages of all the things we've been talking about. But there are other add-ons as well. We have a little Medjed figurine, which you can get as an STL file. Medjed is like you may have heard of him. He's like a mysterious smiter character who appears in a few pages of the Book of the Dead from Egypt. And he's very funny looking. He's like he looks like just a little sheet with two little eyes. He's very cute. And so you can get him as a little miniature to go along with the stat block that's in the book. There's also a set of 50 illustrated cards, illustrated by my partner. We may add in more, but we have to see how many we'll be able to, put into the deck when they are ordered. I think they limit by 50, but we'll see. So all of the items will be in the book as well, of course. But if you want them as like actual printed out cards for your system of preference, then you can get those as well, and then you can hand them to your players and be like, hey, here you go. It's got cool art on the front, and then on the back it's got the mechanics, so they know what they're doing, and so they don't have to have their GM say it does 3 lightning damage plus, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Other than that, we have been looking at other ways to perhaps bring in backers. It's not a guarantee yet, but we are looking into making some cool dice that will also have little medjed eyes on them.
Perfect. Yeah.
Awesome. I love the card idea. I think if I go back to when I first started with 5e, because I came into 5e very late, I did 2 different things to really pick up and learn the system quickly, because campaign I had been running in a different system ended, and my group said, hey, we want you to run D&D 5e because we like the way you DM. I'm like, I don't even know the game. So I had a very short period of time to learn it. One of the things that really helped me was I went to Adventures League and I bought all the cards that were available for 5e. And I played as many different character classes as I could. And what helped me really pick up on things was not flipping through the book. It was having those cards. And not that the cards said everything, because generally you had to have the book also. But I could read what I had on my sheet in the book, and then the cards were the reminder and had the mechanics I needed. All the icons to let me know how fast, what type of action, all those types of things. And it really reinforced my system knowledge and allowed me to play the game very quickly. So if someone plays a 5e system and they use the 5e rules that are here, and then they want to learn how to play Pathfinder 2e or what have you, having the cards with this game to transition is really inspired game design.
Yep.
You mentioned earlier that your game design cup runneth over. I see the fruits of that labor in what you're talking about.
Yep.
Totally. Yeah. And we're super happy with those cards. My partner did a really good job with combining them, as we've been saying all along, with a bit of technology, but also that hard cultural influence at the forefront. So I think almost all of them, if not all of them, are based on real world antiquity and objects you can see in museums and stuff. And so it was very fun to translate, a nebulous cultural concept into, okay, well, if the player has, like, let's say the hook and flail, right? Like the very classic, you can have it like this. You see it on like King Tut's tomb, all over. And I was like, well, wouldn't it be cool if you could raise one and it does for one action? This is Pathfinder 2, of course. We'll have to redesign it for 5e, but you can raise one with one hand and then the other with the other hand, and then you cross them with your third action, and then that does a whole string of interesting things where you can adjust the battlefield and be like a cool commander sort of character, where you like create a lotus blossom that raises a player up in the air, or you go into a sarcophagus and suddenly you can't move anymore, but you give other players your actions and stuff like that.
That's very cool. That's just really, really neat. So flavorful and wonderful. I can't wait. I'm very excited to go to be backing after here. So before we let you go for this evening, Coleman, though, please, how do folks get in touch with you? How do they find the Kickstarter? All that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we've obviously we have the Kickstarter page itself, Khoursara, City of Seven Sentinels, Egypt 5e campaign setting. If you type all of that in, and it'll probably be linked somewhere.
Yeah, it'll be linked down in the show notes for sure. Yep.
Exactly. Other than that, we're mostly on Instagram. That's where most of our followers seem to be. I believe on there we are Khoursara, City of Seven Sentinels, all one word.
Okay.
Could probably link that as well. But yeah, other than that, feel free to back if you think any of that stuff's cool. It's a big pile of things we think are cool, and obviously it's slow going right now. So if it doesn't work out, well, don't worry, we're going to still go and just do smaller. We're going to take all the pieces and kickstart those separately.
Cool.
And I think there clearly is an interest, so I think that'll work. But
nice.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks so very much. I really appreciate you coming on the show, talking about this amazing game you're setting you're putting together. You and your team have done great work, and I really look forward to being able to utilize these concepts and utilize some of the setting information, visit some of the settings. Always in a place where it'd be cool to take folks on a universe hopper kind of thing.
Totally.
So if you have as many different systems as many different types of worlds in a game system there is, and being able to hit let's go to this world this time, navigate this to get out, but let's, almost like Voyager, but you're going to different worlds instead of just different times kind of thing.
Kind of like with Magic or something.
So really, really love this concept. So thank you so much.
Beautiful artwork. I mean, the samples that you sent us of the layout of the book are beautiful. So really, really well done. This is going to be very interesting. So as we said, the link for the Khoursara, which I think I unfortunately had been mispronouncing the entire, even though we talked about this ahead of time. It's
no worries.
But the link to the Khoursara Kickstarter is down in the show notes. Go check it out. Get in on the tiers that are involved in there. Very, very reasonable. When I was taking a look, you get the physical hard copy book for at a $59 tier. So that's exactly where you want to be for a book like this. That's going to be fantastic. So thank you, Coleman, very much for popping on this week to go ahead and talk to us about the game setting. Good luck on the rest of the Kickstarter campaign. Like I said, at the point that this airs, it's going to be running for about another week. So hopefully this last week is fruitful for you. So.
Yeah, we'll see. And thank you for having me on. Thanks for your questions. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, yeah. So let's see here. So coming up next week on the show, we go back to our class warfare. We have our Bard adventure run by Michael Ross. That one hasn't aired yet, and that's just a fun time. Mike runs a really, really different game than any of the rest of us, and so I'm very interested to see how this came out here. So I'll be really interested to go ahead and see that. That'll air next week, and of course, also Preservations Season 3 is continuing to steam on Tuesdays. We are in the midst of episode 5, our kind of last episode of mid-season at this point, and the mysterious breadcrumb trail that has been left for the crew of the USS Delamas Christian. So we'll see where that leads in a couple weeks here. So. Anyway, thank you again, Coleman, for joining us. Really appreciate it as always. And Leonika, nice to see you again. So that's So go check out the Kickstarter, go back it, and get your hands on some really fun Egyptology timey-wimey goodness. So
walk through the golden reeds of time near the megapolis of your dreams.
I love it. We didn't even talk about the Seven Sentinels, but that whole concept is cool too, with those gigantic spires that surround the city. There's just so much cool stuff in here.
And the poetry of the golden reeds. When like I said, I had read it once and I had Speechify talking it to me. I'm driving in the car and I'm like, 15 seconds back, I got to hear that again. 15 seconds back, I got to hear that again. That was really nice.
There's some really, really good stuff in here. You can tell when you're looking at a sample adventure, when people really care about the source material, there's an elegance to it. And so really, really well done. So really looking forward to this, and hopefully the Kickstarter works out for you, and we'll go from there. So
yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, everybody. That is our show for this week. Like I said, we'll be back next week with our next class warfare, the opening of our Bard class warfare with Michael Ross. Until then, we will. We'll see you next week. Thanks very much for listening, everybody. Have a great night. Later.
Good night, all.
Bye.